sort of talk about. So auctioning, a lot of people actually have a different myth about auctions. They think that auctions is an area where properties are sold that are always derelict or in trouble or not going to sell to the open market and so forth. What I like to always clarify to anybody is that auction is another method of sale. 99.9% of the public only understand estate agency. So if you've got a property or you're a developer or you're going to buy a property or you're going to do anything, your first port of call is always going to be an estate agent because you think that's the only source. But obviously there are other methods, and the most successful method other than private treaty estate agency is of course auction. Auction actually conjures up a position of being scared, really, because it scares most people before they go to auction, because they think, well, I might bid over the top, I might twitch a hand or might scratch my hair or something like that, and I might end up buying a property. The whole industry has now changed, especially since COVID. Most of it's gone online, so you can itch away and scratch away as much as you like. There's not going to be a man like me standing there saying you just bought yourself a property because you scratched your head. So those myths are being sort of pushed aside. But in terms of what comes to the market, auction, you can sell anything and everything. It's really one of the best places to market things that estate agents perhaps normally wouldn't even look at. For example, you might find a small plot of land. Now, the thing with plot of lands is that it is very difficult to fund and finance a plot of land because most lenders are not interested in anything other than something that may have some sort of use or an end user, perhaps like a building going on it or some sort of planning permission, or even a building on the piece of land that you are going to buy, are all relevant to why lenders may consider lending. But most plots of lands are sold cash, and therefore their best marketing is probably through auction, where potentially somebody sees and they see a vision in their mind of what they'd like to put up, what they'd like to do. And if they've got the capital to do that, then that's where they are mostly sold. Estate agents, as per se, will often not get involved with land unless they've got some land that has got planning permission. That gives them a little bit of an edge because somebody might be able to fund it. But if they don't and they're not in a position, then that property will not be sold through a traditional estate agency route. So the other method of sale to be considered, obviously, is auction. Now, I'm not going to be able to give you the chapter and verse for the world of auction. You could always contact me if you want to discuss anything. If anybody wants to talk about auctions or talk about their property, I'm always happy to, I'm very approachable. You can email me, call me, and I'm happy to sort of deal with that. My clients vary and I cover the whole country. So the nice thing about my business is that I'm not actually stuck in a town. So, you're not just the expert of that town. I'm looking at properties across the country, anything from maybe, today, for example, I've had a very good busy day of 4 or 5 different styles of property. One is a development. The client has bought, and done the planning permission on it, and now have decided that in their mind and wisdom, they can't actually afford to build it, or they don't have the funds, or they don't have the time. It was a good idea, but they want to get out of it. So, so that's coming into the market. Then I have another one where a client had a sale on his luxury flat, and the sale has fallen through because people's mortgage has been withdrawn based on their status and the fact that the interest rates have gone up. So affordability is now knocked that mortgage offer that they had in the first place on, and so subsequently cannot afford to buy that particular property. The seller there obviously now frustrated because he wants to move abroad, and the property is lying empty. So he's bringing that to auction in order to find a cash purchaser or a buyer who wants to buy as quickly as possible. So he's a motivated seller, on the basis that he wants to move on, because sitting there empty doesn't actually help him. And equally, if he does put a tenant in the property, as we know that the buy-to-let market has just been destroyed over the last few weeks, primarily because of the interest rate that is now being charged on buy-to-lets, it doesn't make it viable. So there are lots of clients are basically, neither here or neither there, because they've got a property, they don't know whether they should rent it, they don't know whether they should cut the price and sell it, and they don't know which way to go. So that's where auction can come in. So that's a variety of the two properties that I've had. Got a probate, which it's taken some time for a probate for a property in Harrow, which is going to come on the market. That needs doing up. It's it was the late mother's property, etc. So it's a variety of the things that that come to the market through auction, and perhaps a lot different to the stuff that may come through an ordinary channel. But they are normally designed and marketed and valued to sell, as opposed to just looking at them. Whereas I always describe it that estate agents will start at the top of the game. So let's say you're going to sell a property and it's only worth £350,000. You have 4 estate agents around, and they will say to you, "Oh, I can get 360." The other one will say, "I get you 370." And ultimately, human nature says, our greed says, "Oh, well, that guy said he could give me 380. I'll give it to him." And what happens is he's taken the instruction on, but what actually happens is, market-wise, he's probably not going to sell it. So he'll just sit there and wait. Whereas the auction business is, we have a guide price that is to tease the best possible buyers. If we get 2 buyers on that property that like it, those 2 will talk up the price to what it's going to actually sell at. So then there's a reserve, and we have to have a reserve before we can actually just turn around and sell it without the seller's consent. So that is quite important to take on board as well. Somebody else connecting, are they?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, I'm late. I'll go and stand in the corner for 20 minutes. Lovely to see you, sir.
No, not at all. Not at all. You stand where you are. You'll be fine.
Right. Are we live, or are you waiting for me?
No. We've been live for a while. So I just saw you coming in. So I thought I'll pause until you've joined us.
Oh dear. So now everybody knows I was late.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to make sure that you felt that bad about it,
Yeah. It's definitely naughty corner time for me. Welcome. Sorry, I'm going to keep quiet and
no worries.
Go and stand in the naughty corner.
Yeah. So we were just talking about auctions and the experience and the benefits of auctions. So I'll continue on that basis. So the types of properties that are sold are quite a varied type of properties in auction. The interesting thing about that is that you can actually cover the whole country with that and the different types. And that's quite a task, quite a challenge. I've got properties on, if you go onto my site, you'll see that I literally am all over the country. Got things up in Keighley and Bradford down to central London. I think there's something near Portsmouth somewhere, I can't remember. So it's it's quite a variety. It's quite a good thing for me, because after all the years I've been in the business, it's quite nice to have the variety to go somewhere else and look at all the other things that are around you. But of course, you've got to be knowledgeable and do the research and make sure that you pitch the prices right and guide people the best you can as well. So that's the auction business as per se, but it's a method of sale. That is my message is always that it is it's another method of sale. The only method of sale that most people tend to use is estate agency and private treaty, because they feel that that's the only route that is available. And I learned, having spent a lot of time in agency, that we were kind of almost didn't know the rules of the auction world. So because you don't know it and no one's actually there to really share with it, or you can go and talk to somebody about it, you almost shy away from it, because you think, well, if I do something, I might end up buying something or having something that I don't particularly want. So it's better not to be involved in something. But it's really quite a fun business to be in. And I think a lot of people do go to auctions, look for their deals in auctions, and it all depends on your journey, really, individual journey. I mean, if you're a novice, then it's always worth looking at these things. If you're a a developer that is doing developments all the time, or buying and selling, or flipping, and all that kind of stuff, then auctions are always a good room. And when the auctions were live, the rooms were used to be bursting at the seam. There's always enough people curious to see, how much of that was going to get and how far. But of course, that has now changed in the sense that most things are now online, and actually, we had to fast track our business in 10 years in about 6 months, because when the pandemic came, everybody literally had to start to think about, how am I going to get attention from customers online, as opposed to doing it, in a room. The bit that we miss as an auctioneer is the room, the fun part of it, the actual gavel and the showmanship that obviously goes, because that now has gone to a large extent. It's very difficult talking to a screen as opposed to talking to humans, especially when they're late and they keep moving around. And but if you were moving around in a live room, you probably bought something by now. So it's good that you're actually in a screen rather than in a live auction. So that's changed quite a lot, and people are, because with the smartphone, there's more people that can actually sit in a coffee shop and just almost eBay bid. That's made more and more people aware of auction as a method of sale and feel that it's quite fun to do. Whereas if you had originally, you would have 15, 20, 30 lots, or whatever the number was, or in some cases 200 lots in some companies. You would travel down from Newcastle, catch the train, come down, sit there, look at it, see it, and then find, actually, you know what, I'm not going to go. On the other side, the flip side of the coin for that is that you get to the end of it and you think, you know what, I'm probably not going to get it. So you talk yourself out of it and you actually don't make the journey. Whereas now, because people can do most of the things online, it just means that they take themselves into a room, sit there, watch it, and can bid away. And from a seller's point of view, that means there's more eyeballs onto the actual auction across the country, as opposed to having maybe 200, 300, 400 people that would have actually made the trip and turn up. So there is a lot of differences in that. But as I said, as an auctioneer, we miss the showmanship out of it, but which is part of the whole bravado, if you like, of going to an auction. You want to be able to have that communication with the buyers and the bidders and so forth. So that's the bit that we miss. But the plus side of it is, if you're a seller, then of course you've got more people looking at it, and you just don't see them looking at it. They're just on their smartphones and watching them auction. You can know that. Now, the good thing about the auction world is that we can look at the number of people that register. So you have to register. You have to put your details down. It is actually quite a legal binding situation that you're getting into. It's so important to look at the packs. I encourage any viewer, any buyer, that they must register. Two things for that. One is that they must register, so they must get all the details. And secondly, we must know that you've registered genuinely. Now, I can tell you that I've sold properties to people who have just walked in on the day. They walk in, they like the sound of something, and they put their hand up and they buy it. They've never reviewed it. They've not even looked at the legal pack, not looked at anything. And so that is the beauty of auctions, but that's also the scary part of auctions, as it was in its old days, because when you are doing that, you have no idea what you bought. I can give you an example. A client bought a very nice property up in Manchester. It wasn't one that I had sold. It was one that he'd bought somewhere else. And then he came to see me afterwards and said, I bought this very nice property and it's given a good return. What do you think? And I said, well, have you looked at the pack? Have you looked at all the leases? Have you done, is it? Oh, yeah, everything is there. He said, I've looked at it. Anyway, for 3 or 4 months, he didn't get any communication from the so-called tenant that was in the property. And then he decided that he'd actually get in his car and go up there and have a look. And there was shutters down, and it was a horrible location, and there was no scene. I mean, the shop was not what it was. There was nobody in the shop, and the seller and whoever the sellers were had created all the documents, put them up, and he just took a view that, and so they got their money, but he got a vacant shop that nobody was actually in. So it's so important to make sure that you do as much research and as much visiting where possible. I know a lot of people go on Google and check it out by Google Earth and think that that stands there and I can do this and I can do that nowadays. But there is nothing like standing at the place, looking at what you're going to buy. Now, in the grand scheme, you might say, well, I can't be bothered to spend 2 hours driving up there. Or I might have a friend who has a friend whose friend's going down there, and they might have a look at it and see if it's still standing up. You know, people do these crazy things. And then afterwards find that maybe there was actually nobody there. So my view is that you should always check out the legal pack, read it, understand it. The parts in the legal pack that are probably the most important parts for you to look at are the special conditions. In auction, there are so many things that you can do as a seller and demand as a seller in an auction that you can never do in a private treaty. There are also several different methods of auction. So there's a modern method of auction, which you probably have heard of. If you haven't, what that means is that there's companies now set up who charge the buyer for everything. So if you're buying something, the buyer is going to not only pay stamp duty, legal costs, you know, all the conditions, they probably end up having to pay the auction fees as well. I'm a traditional auctioneer. I don't agree with the modern method of auction. Not that I don't want to do it, I just simply don't agree with it. And the reason I don't agree with it is that I think that people should have skin in the game. A seller should have skin in the game. Otherwise, you may as well just be an estate agent and stick it up for no sale, no fee, and then charge, and nobody gets any money out of it. You can do all the running around and get nowhere out of it. So I think that it's important that a seller should have as much skin in the game, i.e., you know, pay the fees, pay the auction fees, look at the traditional method, provide the legal packs that they got to do, and not put the whole burden on buyers. Now, these modern method of auctions do work perhaps in the north of England. And the reason why they work in the north of England is because of values of properties. Imagine you're buying a house at £50,000 or 100,000, and there's things that are sold at 10,000, 15, 20,000 pounds. Well, if you're paying a £5,000 auctioneer's fee, it's probably not as painful as if you're going to pay 5% or 3% of £500,000 to £1 million in the south. And that then starts to make a significant amount of difference. And all people will do is deduct the amount of costs of the amount that they may offer, and that may actually be less than what they're asking for. And subsequently, that seller isn't going to sell. And if he doesn't sell, what's he going to do the next time around? He's going to have to reduce it. So theoretically, he's actually ended up paying for it anyway by reducing it. So my view is, you know, why go the long way around it when you can actually just say, look, these are my terms, this is the way it is. So I'm of the opinion that it's fair to be a traditional auctioneer. A seller must do their bit and the buyer must do their bit. And the buyers, I encourage always to make sure that they register, download the legal pack. If you don't read it or you choose not to do anything with it, at that point, that's nothing to do with me. My view is I've given you what you want. And if you don't want to read it, then that's your choice, not my choice. But if you do choose to do it, then make sure you get a solicitor or somebody that you knows to understand what that legal pack contains. So it's quite important in the do's and the don'ts. The do's are that make sure that you do all your due diligence, check everything out that you know about it. And if in doubt, you know, put your hand up, ask the question, and check it out. A lot of people go away and give a bad message. Oh, I went to an auction, bought something, it was really rubbish. What they don't tell you is it was really rubbish because you probably didn't do your homework in the first place. But that then is an image that is given to everybody, and the people start to say, oh, well, I won't go to auction, because you never know what you're going to get. So it's really, really important to understand that when you're selling, of course, provide every bit of information you can. The difference is about the before and the after. In auction, you get all your documents up front so that you can make an informed decision in the right way, in the right time ahead. And you got time to look at that. The problem with the business as traditional estate agents is concerned, that's all happens afterwards. And if you're a seller, and time is money, and you must put a value on your time and a price on that time and your own time, you can actually put it on the market and find that you could be selling it for the next 6 months, thinking it's all going through. Whereas I literally just had that conversation with the client today. The property has been lying empty. They had a buyer on it. The buyer said they were definitely buying it. He didn't bother to rent it. He didn't bother to do anything with it. And the last minute, the buyer has now pulled out because his mortgage has been withdrawn, because the products have been changed. And so they're not in a position to buy. And now he's holding the baby. It's lying empty. He's not had any income out of it and so forth. So he's come to me and said, look, I've thought about this, and I just need to get rid of it because I'm moving abroad. And therefore, if I leave it empty for another 6 months, I'm just worrying about the costs, the bills, the rates I've got to pay, everything I've got to continue to pay on this. It's better for me to cut my cloth accordingly and just move on and get it sold. So there can be bargains and there can be opportunities within the auction world. I find it very exciting. It's something I've thoroughly enjoyed doing. I'm always happy to throw out the opportunity for anybody who wants to ask any questions. So I'll leave the floor open to you. If there's any questions, please fire away, and let's go from there.
So what is the sort of strategy for a seller, the process?
In what sense? To put it on the market to sell?
Yeah, because what's happening is I'm selling my father's house, but the trouble is I've got a buyer, but nobody's getting in contact with me, and I'm not really hearing anything, even though my solicitor's getting a bit annoyed. But I phoned the estate agent who we're with, and he keeps saying he'll get back to me. And I don't know exactly what to do, because I want to give him a bit of time, because he's had problem with lawyers and mortgage brokers. So I'm not really sure what to do. So if I was to all of a sudden put it on auction, what would I have to do as a seller?
Okay, so that's a really good question, and it's actually a generic question. It's asked often enough, so I'll just deal with that for you in the best I can right now. Mostly agents will have that situation, and the current climate, they are all having difficulties with the brokers, and it's not the brokers, actually, it's the lenders that are changing their policies and lending criteria. So if you had a buyer on your particular property or your father's property, then that buyer that the agent has got may have had his mortgage changed because the interest rates have changed. And so subsequently, he might have found that he now no longer really has the mortgage offer that he thought he had. He's got to go back with the whole process again. The problem with that is time. Now, he might get through all of that and find that the lender says your affordability, which is the big question I'm getting nowadays, is the affordability. The things that really have affected the affordability, which normally was just basically stamp duty or interest rate. The thing that has now been brought into it is all the utilities. So each household is having to find between 800 to £1,000 a month more, and that might make that person's mortgage not affordable. And so you might actually not get very far unless another buyer comes, and that's all about time. Now, part of the reason the agent's probably not getting back to you is he's also probably worried that if I don't give you the information you want, you're probably going to disinstruct him and give it to another agent. And he's done a lot of work to try and get there. And that has always been the problem with agents. They kind of hide behind it. I've always been the view that it's better to tell the customer the reality and say, look, this is my problems. these are the issues, and this is what I'm facing with. And I think you'll get more comfort as a seller, and they will be more comfortable as an agent. But unfortunately, it is the nature, and it's the nature of the beast, really. You know, you don't want to lose it. You've done all this work. It's gone pear-shaped. How do I do it? So there's two things that the agent's probably doing. One is he's trying to make sure that the original buyer is still trying to keep in there. And secondly, he's hoping if he doesn't do it, he can actually slip in a second buyer and then keep the deal going. Because nothing of nothing is nothing for him. He's not going to get anything until it's sold. But if he loses it, he's not going to get, you know, somebody else is going to win. Is that okay? Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Am I at the naughty corner and what have I bought?
Yeah, you don't know what you bought, but I'll send you the bill later.
I would have bought something else at an auction room. Right. So you talked about registration.
Mm.
Am I right in thinking you have to register to attend the auction and then you have to register for your lot separately, or is it, how does that work?
So the best exercise I can ever give you is go through the process, because that's the easiest way of doing it. So if you see something that is on my site, which is auctionproperty.co.uk, you'll find a property that you might like, you might not like, but even if you don't like one, you can just click on it, register, set yourself an account with EIG, which is the Essential Information Group. They send you a passport, you've got yourself a system. What you then do is you look at the property that you want, and you can download the legal documents from there. Now, the good thing about that registration is any time that any of those documents change, the system will tell you that there's an update of the document, or there's a change, or something's taken off, or something's added. So it's a very good way of making sure you're totally up to speed on that. If you're going to bid, then there is a part of that registration that says to you, I want to buy this property, and it will take you to where you need to register to bid. And that means that you need to put your information, you know, maybe a photographic picture, a proof of address, et cetera, ultimately a deposit of £5,000 or whatever it is. But the deposit doesn't get taken from your account. It just gets frozen in your debit card or your credit card. On the basis that if you are successful in that bid, that's when it gets taken. If it doesn't, it's like going to a hotel and you put your card and say, oh, well, I might take room service, but if you don't take it, then there's nothing that's going to be taken on it. So in that case, it's quite good. So that system will show you everything that you need to do. And I encourage everyone and anyone that wants to look at it, first port of call, have you registered? If you haven't registered, please register. Why? Because you need to look at the documents. I need to know that you've registered. If you come to me and said to me, oh, Joe, I've seen a property that's on your site, can I buy it? My first question to you is going to be, did you register? Have you downloaded the legal pack? And if you say no, I'm going to say, well, until you've done that, we haven't got a discussion. You do that, do your homework, and come back to me. Now, you can download the documents. Whether you chose to do anything with them, that's your issue, not mine. But I know that you've downloaded them. And as far as I'm concerned, I provided you with the information that you've requested. And if you choose then not to read them or do anything with them, but you still want to buy and bid, then that's buyer beware. That's the situation.
Surinder, you got any questions?
Yes. You mentioned auctions going online. Are they all online now, or there are some live auctions?
Very few. Some of the big boys did actually go back to the room to do that. They've now started to do what they call virtual online auctions. So they'll stand in front of a screen and, you know, bid. But it's just, I just find that it's a halfway house, and it doesn't really do it. So I would say that majority of them, to be perfectly honest with you, we've been all online for years, haven't we? What is online? It's been on the web, basically. But the definition of online is that you can purchase a property that you have viewed online, downloaded all the documents online, and you can bid online.
Yeah, well, online means online because all these big houses have been doing streaming live auctions
That's right.
through AEG or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to AEG, now you said you have to register with them
Mhm.
to now. Do you have to pay the subscription? Because they charge a lot of heavy subscription to be a member of AEG.
So if you are a member of EIG,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Essential Information Group.
Yeah.
You're a member because you are a avid and regular bidder, buyer, and so forth. So you're going to get alerts. Where we are as an auctioneer is that we use the same platform to provide any buyer all of the information that they so want. So you don't have to pay for that. You just need to register to be able to download that information, and there's no charge for that.
Okay.
And you could do that 100 times.
Mhm.
But if you want to be on their mailing list as a preferred person that's going to get the latest property that's just come on the market as a bulletin, then they may have a charge for that.
Okay.
It's two services that you provide. It's they provide registration service, and then they've got their own. I think it's described as the your property for the auction world, right? Or my move for the your move.
Yeah,
For the
Well,
auction.
So-
basically, they give you the auction coming up and results of the auctions and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So what they do is every auction, pretty much every auction, they have got the market slightly cornered. Pretty much every auctioneer uses the EIG platform, and most people have not got a clue what EIG do. I mean, if you're a layman and didn't do auction, who's the EIG? You wouldn't know anything about them.
It's run by David Sanders, I believe, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
But
He used to be a barrister and knows his stuff. Well,
he knows his stuff. But the point I'm trying to make is that EIG, he cornered with auctioneers. So we pay him for the service that he provides us. So he doesn't really need to go market EIG because, we're doing it for him all the time, because I'm telling you, you need to go to register on my site. And as soon as you go into my site and click for registration, you're actually going to go through EIG as the provider. So, he's in a win-win situation either way. But I don't think you have to pay him lots of money if you really wanted to be a member of his thing. I suppose there is some, but most people only register for the documents of the properties that they actually like themselves.
Now, we talked about going to auctions. So if a first timer wants to go to auction, what is the first thing you would recommend they do before they go and bid, apart from the registration process?
I think they should always go and view what they're going to buy. Without a shadow of a doubt, there's a lot of people I've seen in my journey that actually turn up to the auction and, believe it or not, have no intentions of buying something and actually end up buying. I'll give you an example of a chap who came into an auction and we were selling 5 lots, i.e. these little tiny plots that we dream one day you might be able to stand on and say, I own it or not. And we were selling them for £1, 50 pence, 35 pence, and so forth. And he got a little excited. And he thought, okay, well, I'll put my hand up. First one, second plot, third plot, fourth plot, fifth plot. He bought them all. And then we took him into the auction room and said, please sign your documents. And he had not read the special conditions. He had not been to the site. He didn't know what the plots were, but he just thought if he was buying them for £1, that's okay. But the special conditions had all the costs. So he had to part with £35,000 before he left, which we had to take on a variety of credit cards and debit cards and so forth.
Wow.
But he did not have any idea that he had to pay for that. So my suggestion always, which is why I encourage people to make sure that you read the legal pack and you visit the site and you understand what it is you're buying. But if you decide to put your hand up and buy it, then of course our terminology is buyer beware. You know that this is what we're selling and that's what you're doing. So people do run away with the idea. So the answer to your question is, first of all, go and see the property. Make sure you can get on it. I mean, these lots that were sold were things that I think, not even one of these drones will be able to get onto it. You'd have to, I don't know how you're going to get on there, but they were like in the middle of nowhere. But people do sell these things at auction.
But how did he get to pay what was the 35? If it was £1, why did he end up paying 35 grand?
Because in the special conditions, all of the agency fees, all the auctioneer's fees, all the legal fees were upon the buyer to pay.
Oh, okay.
And Joe, what century was that in, that sale?
It wasn't in the last century, it was in this sale.
Because you're talking in-person rooms, right?
Yeah, but that's only 2 years ago.
Okay, all right. Well, no, it's just when you talked about 35p, I thought, bloody hell, like talk about inflation.
but you see,
that's what I was thinking myself.
The point I'm trying to make is that when you got a piece of land, our job is, as an auctioneer, we know our fees are covered. This is what I said, the difference between an auctioneer, traditional and modern method. In a traditional auctioneer, a seller can put in their special conditions that they want the buyer to pay for all the costs. Now, if the buyer does not do their due diligence and look at it, then it's on on their head. Now, we could sell a piece of land for £1. You see, doesn't matter. But what you don't know in auction is what's actually in the pack. And if you haven't read that, then you're liable to be paid for that. So whether it's in this century or the last century, it doesn't really matter. It's the purpose, it's the method that matters.
Yeah. Now, online auctions, because you've got to register for the auction, do you then have to I was just trying to clarify, do you have to register for the lot you're interested in, or once you register for the auction, you can bid on any lot?
No, individual lots, individual legal packs, individual bidding on it. So you have to register for that particular property, because you're going to put your deposit down. Now you're going to have a deposit and do it. Now let's flip that around for a minute. You're an auctioneer and I'm going to buy one of the properties, but I've just stuck maybe £5,000, and then I'm thinking I'm going to buy this one or that one. Well, which one are you going to sell to me? You're only going to sell to me the one that I've actually got the deposit on. Anything else, I'm not in a position to buy because I haven't registered to bid on that. You don't have any money. Now, if the electronic gavel falls, what are you going to go for? What are you going to say? Well, you say, I changed my mind. I didn't do that. I might as well not be in the business. So it's very rigid in that sense, very political.
So that scenario couldn't happen in the online world, where you just walk into a room, even if you've registered for the auction and you just choose what you're going to bid for there. You've got to actually register for the specific lots, right?
That's right. Yeah. And that's actually a good thing, because when you were coming into the room in the old days, then you could walk in. You didn't actually have to even register. You got a catalog, you stood there and just put your hand out. Stuff. Yeah. That has now dramatically changed with the online. So it's good in some ways and bad in other ways. As I said earlier on, it's good because you now are rigid and you've got a system that says you. It's bad because you can't actually have the bravado. I can't say, that gentleman that keeps moving around there, he's the guy that's just bought it, and he's going to say, no, it wasn't me, it was the guy behind. So there's all sorts of things that we miss, but it's much better now because you can get all the documents, you can get everything, and you have the time to actually study it. Whereas if you've gone into a traditional auction in a room, you wouldn't have had the time. You might have just turned up there with a friend and thought, well, hang on a minute, I know that place, that looks all right. It's down the road from me. Forget it. I'll buy that. It's worth 25, 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand, whatever. And then all of a sudden you're into another situation. So
yeah. In the old days, in the old method, I knew someone who would actually just, he met me as he was on the way to the auction, phoned the bank up on the way. The bank said, yeah, buy it. And he bought the stuff at the auction. So that couldn't actually happen, could it?
Yeah, no.
In the old days, when you had ballroom auctions, I think that's the term they used to call them.
Yeah.
They would give you special conditions virtually on the day.
That's right. Well, no, you could have had special conditions emailed to you or posted to you, or part of the catalogue that was done, in the traditional way. Somebody stuck it in the post box and here's your thing. what they do is, and when I had to do it in the room, what we used to do is take every file and park it there. So if somebody came along, you said to me, I want to buy 25 Acacia Avenue. Have you got the legal pack? I'd say, yes, it's over there. There you are. You can sit there and you can read it and it's all there. And then you say, when's it coming up? It'll be up in 4 lots time. Oh, I didn't make it on time. I'm sorry, sir. You want the legal pack. It's going to be up in 4 lots time. Good luck. Now it's either you decide, oh, I'll have a look at this and I've got, 4 lots and a quick gleam through, or I leave it. And then your mate's looking across the road from you and he's up there bidding for you. And he's going to say, I don't want him to have that. Forget it. I'll put my hand up. And that's the stuff we miss. We love that part, obviously, because that's the whole, sell. But now we have to look at people on the screen potentially, or talk to them through Zoom and try and convince them that that's what they've got to be doing. But so it's actually better for the buyer now because you've got more time and you can understand it and you can go away and think about it. Whereas in the room, you get taken. I used to say that when you go into an auction room, there was a little fairy that was at the door and she sprinkled a little bit of fairy dust and something changed in that human being. And it's true. Because they'd go in there, and as Punjabis, pat de hath marna, all that, aaj leke jana, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to have this. And they'd just go into that room with that whole mindset. I'm not leaving here today. But I promise you, as they left the door, that fairy dust was taken away, right? Recycling. And you get them the other side of the room and they didn't buy it. You go back to them afterward and say, that lot you bid on earlier on will take 10 grand less. You want to say, no, I've changed my mind.
Oh, wow. It's sort of literally, there's a thing about sales and emotion and the opportunity.
Yeah, that's why I call it fairy dust. You can dust it as you come in, but it takes it away as you go out. And literally in that minute, that second, split second, they'll just say, no, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to do it. And they were doing it for some reason. Sometimes they were doing it because they did see a guy across the room that, either they want to make sure he paid more for it by sticking their hand up, or they wanted it and not him have it. And if we never got the reserve, we'd turn around and say, I'm sorry, I can't sell that. We haven't reached our reserve. And then you go to them afterwards and say, do you want to buy it now? I didn't want to buy it in the first place.
I bet you've got some stories, right?
A few.
If you say, like, because I've gone to auctions and I wanted to buy one, thank God I didn't put any money down. And what happens if somebody wants a lot and they put down the deposit, but then all of a sudden the person who's selling it turns around, you say like a day or something before the auction? What happens then?
Well, first and foremost, your money is safe until you've bid and your bid is accepted. If your bid is accepted, you lose your money. And if you don't complete, you lose your money. If the seller, for any reason, decides not to sell, obviously he must return the deposit. But once they're in auction, the person that is actually in charge in the auction room, sadly for you all, is the auctioneer. It's not even the seller. So if I've sold something, I've sold it under auction terms and conditions. And the drop of the gavel is an exchange of contracts.
No, but say like you put in money to bid on a property, which, like I said, I was going to do a lot in Peckham, but thank God I didn't put any money. But the seller withdrew the lot.
Well, there was no loss there, is it? You didn't put any money in it,
no.
So it's his
But
right
what
to
if
withdraw
I
it.
had put? Say like I had put money and
the money isn't taken. This is an online thing, is it?
Yes, yeah.
So your money isn't actually taken. It is frozen. So it's like if you go to a hotel and you decide that you want to leave credit card details just in case you have room service, or you go to the bar and say, put it on my room.
Yeah.
They hold that money. But if you choose that you didn't take anything, that is just taken off. So in online auctioning, what they do is they hold the money, which is £5,000.
Yeah.
If you didn't bid, it goes back. It just the lock is taken off your money. And if the seller decided not to sell, then you haven't lost anything.
And you can only put it on debit cards, not credit cards. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think that's because of charges. I mean, you can do whatever you like, but American Express charges 2.5% of the
Yeah,
amount.
they do. They don't. I don't think a lot of auction, because I found a lot of
Well, unless,
say they don't take American Express, and I found it was difficult to put a credit card on. They would only accept debit cards, and I found
and
that.
the reason for that is that we end up having a big bill from the credit card companies.
Oh.
So if you're charging a 2.5% cost, then yes, you might put £5,000 down, and you're going to say, well, I've spent £5,000. I'm not going to pay for that. So that cost comes to us. So you might find that in your special conditions, in some cases, there will be charges written in there that if you paid it by a credit card, then you will be liable to pay for the charges. And those charges can be, another £400 or £500 sometimes.
Just interested in something. It's the first time I put my hand up. I never used to put my hand up at school. It doesn't work online either. So I'm not gonna. I'm glad that I learned that today. Thanks for all your information. It's been really useful. I wanted to ask. Obviously, I owe you a drink, maybe. But nothing.
You don't know what he drinks yet, do you? That's a bad idea, mate.
No, but that's the advantage of online, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you meant an online drink, not a real drink, right?
He's going, here's my drink.
But so I'm interested actually in looking at this building project where we're converting it into 4 flats. Now, it's actually, to be honest, it's actually a lot of time and effort to manage this project, and I wanted to know, if you're, let's say, the planning permission and this has all been done and the foundation's been built, it's putting this to get a value on this at auction. Like, how long would that take, and how long would that generally the cash how long would it take us to get the cash, let's say, if it's sold? And then also, what would the fees be for selling it?
Okay,
roughly.
So the entry fee is £550 plus VAT, so £660 in total.
That's to put
the lot in, yeah. And it's not refundable. It's a one-off payment.
So there's your drink.
Yeah, no, I do. I get the drink will come later. The 2% is what we charge on the fall of the gavel. So if it sells, we take 2%. So if it's £1 million, I'm going to take 10 grand off you. Okay? Yeah. In terms of how it happens, we do a valuation for you, which will give you a guide price and a reserve price. The reserve price is the price that we are not authorized to sell less than, unless we've got specific written instructions from the seller to say, yes, do sell it. If it isn't, then we can't sell it, and we don't get to that point. That's what happens. The guide prices that you see are prices that are obviously set to generate the interest in that property.
Yeah.
So it's fairly simple. Once it's exchange contracts, so the gavel has fallen and you've sold it, it's 28 days for completion.
Yeah. Okay. And can you sell through, I guess you can sell it as a company via auction? It must be simple.
So if it's in a limited company, if it's only property that's in that, we will sell the asset, which is obviously the property itself. We are not authorized to sell your company, but you may choose to negotiate the sale of your company under special conditions with the buyer. And so that's not something that we would get involved. We are there to sell the asset, and not the company.
Yeah. Okay.
Question for you. So you've got a building project that started. You put the foundations in, yeah. And you want to sell that, I'm guessing, right?
Well, just looking at the options, like
you're looking at the options, yeah.
So I think it's 50-50, to be honest. Like the amount of time and everything involved in it. We've got I'm interested personally in developing this project, but this is a family asset, and it's like it will increase complication for me personally. And so I would like to get into property development separately, because I do tiling and bathrooms and this kind of thing with some other people. So this property, the planning permission has been granted for 4 flats. It's actually a shop at the moment, and the foundations have been done. It's a 2-story extension and a side extension as well. So I've managed that up to now, and yeah, just maybe just kind of interested in having a look at getting shot of it.
Have you got any investors? Have you got any investors in it? Besides, you said it's a family thing. Well, what I was thinking, if you're going to, you're converting it a shop into residential?
Yeah.
And where is that based?
It's in Surrey.
Have you thought of going to a PIN meeting and trying to get other investors to invest in it, to use their money to do up the house and sell it at, with interest?
It's a possibility.
Well, look on Property Investors Network, and I don't know where in Surrey they might. I think Croydon might be the nearest for you. But what you could do is, if you go on the PIN network on Google, PIN, find one of their meetings, which is the first one is free, and see if you can get some investors to help you do up the property. And then with a certain percentage, if you can do the numbers and convince them to do it, then you might get the money from the investors, do it up the property at a certain percentage that they'll get back once you've sold it.
I think we're getting off topic now.
Sorry, getting back to the auction, Joe, is it worth thinking about this as all right, it's a 650 quid punt, put it in the auction, put a reserve in, see what he gets?
Yeah, I mean, we have similar. I've just taken on instructions, which will be online probably tomorrow, day after. Similar scenario which is in Barnet, Enfield, actually, Barnet Road, Hadley Road in Enfield.
Oh, very nice area.
So nice area. So my clients there, they got planning permission to knock this house down and put 4 flats. When they do the viability on it, it was by the time they've paid everything, they've had it for a year, they've rented it and get an income. But the reality is that they are all professionals busy in their own life. And by the time they actually bring in the teams, they've worked it out that they're probably not going to end up with a great deal. So they have instructed me, I've given them a guide price. It's okay for a jobbing builder, because what will happen is a builder will take it and keep his team together. It's like an infill for them. And the biggest market now is build to rent. So there's a huge requirement where people will say, I've got the money, I've got the team. So when you take winter as a period, like now, somebody might find that they are now going to be not on their own site, so they're going to be in site, but they've got a team that normally does all the exterior, the footings, the outside. That team is now going to wander off. So a jobbing builder will probably buy that site, get the work done, get it ready in speed. So it'll cost less for him because he's actually doing it for himself as opposed to making a margin for someone else.
Yeah, they're called hospital cases.
Yes. They are hospital cases, but the point is that this is sort of thing that does exist. So you might find that you've got a site that you may want me to look at. I can give you a view on it, and you can decide whether it's viable for you to stick it in the auction and sell it, or carry on building it. And I understand the family issue, because that is when, it's really hard as a family. You almost want to take your own money out and start on your own, because you're going to have too many cooks in there. Everybody's going to tell you how it's going to happen. And actually, no one's going to go anywhere with it. And you'll probably end up doing all the work.
Yeah,
that's great words of wisdom.
That's the thing I found even in business partnerships. And so when you've got 4 parts, dragging someone along, one person is hard enough sometimes, and sometimes they have to drag me.
Right? Can we come back next question?
Yeah, Joe, just to finish that off, in an auction where you've got a scenario where they've started the foundations. Now, if it was a new build, would you be able to transfer the guarantee with it, or is that something you don't get involved with, or any advice on that?
So on the new build, we are instructed on 3 barn conversions on behalf of a lender, and the developer, unfortunately, has run out of steam and time. So we've taken charge of all of their guarantees and warranties. Of course, we can't offer them a builder's guarantee because the builder is now no longer there. So we'll have an indemnity policy put in place, and maybe some funds held back to cover the work later on. Each case has its own individual, and I'm really quite blessed to be able to have had every possible scenario thrown at me to be able to advise and guide on it. So, you know, I'm always happy to sort of discuss anything there. But the answer to your question is that if it's there and it's available, we'll pass it on. And if it's there and not available, we'll try and get it insured.
You can get an indemnity for that.
Yeah.
That sort of. And one more question in that planning scenario. Often in auctions, you see, you can say no comment if you want. You'll see these properties that come up, they put the planning in, they haven't got an answer, but they'll sneak it into the auction on hopium that someone will put their hand up and buy it because they think they've got planning.
Of course, this is the thing with auction, which is why I go back to my point that I encourage everyone to check the legal packs, because if it is, it should be there. If it isn't, then don't buy it.
Oh God, I've seen an opportunity.
Okay, right. The next question to you, Joe, is what not to do when you go to an auction?
Well, what not to do is obviously make sure that you go and buy and do the things that you're not ready to do. Otherwise, you will end up holding a baby for something that you're not going to be responsible. Always understand your market, understand what the product is that you're actually looking for. Don't do and buy the things that you didn't actually go in there to buy in the first place. If you're, for example, just looking at this discussion for a few minutes back, if you're a builder and a developer, then you know that that's your forte. And if you're a guy who's going to buy a shopper and uppers because you can manage that, then that's your forte. But don't be a shopper and upper and then decide I'll go and be a builder and find that actually you've done. So the don't do's are, in my opinion, do the things that you're good at and don't do the things that you think you can be good at, because that's the reason why you're going to go wrong, because we all think we can do this and we can do that. So the don'ts are that make sure that you do the don'ts. And then the don'ts are don't do the things that you can't do in the first place.
Stick to your lane.
You know it.
Yeah. Okay.
Surinder, any more questions?
Yeah, just one more.
More 50p's, mate. You've got to put more 50p's in the meter.
Later. It hasn't gone out yet. These timed auctions run by mainly by estate agents up north, which who ask for upfront monies and all sorts of things. Are, in my opinion, a waste of time, but can we explain to our listeners what it means? What is the actual the process of the auctions?
Okay, so timed auctions. Let's say that we got a property, and we're going to set a time pack for the next 3 days for people to bid. I think my opinion on that is that I used to do a longer time auctions. So if you went on my auction site, I would say bidding starts at 9 and it closes at 12. I can tell you honestly, the bidders only came in at 10 to 12. All morning, nobody done nothing, right? Because that's the auction thing about yourselves. So the timed auctions are put in as more of an instruction getter rather than an instruction seller. So they convince people to say, look, if we put it on a timed auction, you know, you might get lots of people that are bidding and therefore blah, blah, blah. So what I'm trying to say is that I think that's complete rubbish. I don't do it because I used to do, my time was 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, for example. You can start bidding at 9 and I found all the time. So now I do an hour. That's it. You've got time. I put an hour, and even then that hour is the 10 minutes before the hour's up. Everybody wakes up and I can see them. They're all watching. They're all alive. They're all looking, but they're all waiting for the first one to make the first move.
It's the same as the auction?
eBay,
with the-
yeah,
yeah.
eBay is it's exactly the same principle. So timed auctions were designed more, as far as I'm concerned, as an instruction getter for someone who doesn't understand auctions, and they'll say to them, look, you know, we'll go and put it on and you might get all these bidders and we'll put a time of 7 days on it. And in 7 days time, and then when the 7 days ends, there's nobody on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Been very informative. Any other
Welcome.
questions, anybody?
Yeah, Joe. So what I used to hear about auctions previously was it sort of tells you where the market's going to go because they're so reactive.
Yeah,
Is that still the case with live or with online auctions?
absolutely. I mean, I can tell you now that my whole day today is probably been much busier as a one day when I look at it, primarily from the fact that what the market's doing generally. So there are out there, people are sitting on things that are thinking, so developers might have had a bridging facility on there, you know, that money is ticking on, the chances of that happening and then building and then maybe selling is as lesser as possible. So they're going to come to me now, and that will tell the story of who. So the new guy will actually do his funding starting now, wouldn't he? And he's buying another 18 months. The current seller is probably already at the end of his 18 months and he hasn't built it. So he's already lost a bit of fat in that situation. So yeah, it does tell you a story all the time.
And which way is the market heading from what you're seeing?
It's a seller's market.
That means
It's a buyer's market. It's a buyer's market. Buyers are the ones, yeah, especially when it comes to rental property, buy to let investments, so forth. They're not giving the returns, and they're stuck. So either they got to cut the cloth accordingly or ride the storm.
So final question for you. Next 12 months, this time next year, where are we going to be on the market? Residential properties.
I think we're going to be back in shape in probably 6 months' time.
Oh, you think it's going to be as good as that?
Yeah. One thing I've learned in 42 years, we've gone into neutral and then we go to drive. Very, very rarely has it actually gone into reverse. And this is only a correction that we're going to get. And this is, for the first time, I'll probably say there's a reverse. And the reason why there's a reverse is because there are too many reasons. Normally, we had stamp duty or interest rates. Now we got stamp duty, interest rate, and utilities. And it's now beyond that. So we'll probably get a little bit of a reverse. But I think that given what I heard today and the stability that is happening, they can't afford not to. The only thing that makes everything go round is the property. The only subject is you could touch it, feel it, and see it. Even if it's lying empty and doing nothing, you still look at it and go, oh, well, at least it's mine. And when you're looking at stocks and shares and so on, not that I'm an investing advisor here, you're just looking, you're putting that trust in someone else's. So property will always bounce back, and I'd give it 6 months.
Fantastic.
You said bounce back. So how much of a reverse do you anticipate?
Not a great deal when you think about it. If in 6 months' time, if you had a 10%, let's say even 15%, that's, you know, it's not going to kill the market. It's not going to be 50%. That'll never happen. The first house I sold was 34,950. And that was in Hayes, just off Cold Harbour Lane. At the same house I went to see about 18 months ago, £650,000.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, same one.
So what I'm saying is that's the journey, you know.
Yeah. What century was that in, by the way?
It's the same century I was born in.
The first house I sold was £16,000.
Yeah.
And that's worth over 600 today.
There you go. So, you know, what I'm saying is the ratio is that if you look at then to now, what has happened in the property market, it's only gone forward, which is why I use my gear stick on that basis, that it either goes to neutral or drive. Very rarely does it go into reverse.
But we're getting a bit of a reverse here, right?
I think we're going to have to turn a little bit of a corner on the reverse. Yeah.
That's very politely put. I'll remember
that. I'm a polite person to the best.
It's nicely cut. You could be a politician, Joe. You know, I think you would, right? Joe, look,
you never know.
Thank you very much for taking out your time.
No problem.
Sharing some of that enormous wisdom.
Yep.
Please come back on. We'd like to see how the market's doing, maybe in a few months' time.
Sure. Anytime. Let me know.
Okay,
and thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
More questions?
Nope, I think we're done for now.
Fantastic. Great program, Joe. All thanks to you.
Thank you.
Special guest. And thanks to Surinder for getting you on, because it took a bit of persistence, but well done.
I know. I do. Well, as you can see, I'm traveling around and I do get involved, but I enjoy it. So
fantastic. Thank you for taking out the time and sharing the 42 years of wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.